Music theory is a huge subject. It's the practical study of all possibilities musical, right? And I'm talking about the 12-tone Western system, the major scale, minor scales, relative minor, diatonics, chromatics, like all of the stuff. It's huge. We've been studying it for centuries. We've been writing books about it. We've written an entire language to express it. So it's a very, very vast subject, right? Let's just say there's a bazillion things in there. You may never know it all, right? It's the kind of thing that you might not ever want to know it all. But there is one core capability, just one core capability that you need to put any of that information on the neck. It all goes on the neck in the exact same method. Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today I'm going to show you this core capability. We're going to put a few things together into what I would call a core capability. And once you have this core capability, you're going to be able to put any new information on the neck much more easily because you're going to be sort of calibrated in line with musical theory, you know, the constructs and the fundamentals of music theory. So, before we get started, I want to take you back in time to when you learned how to ride a bike, because there's something that you also need besides this core capability, and that is just a bit of passion. So just remember when you saw that person riding a bike, it was your big sister or it was your best friend. And as a youngster, you were like, oh my God, I have to have that capability. I have to know how to do that. Now, as you got closer to that skill and understanding what was going to happen, you learned that you were going to you're going to have a bloody knee and you were going to have a bruised elbow by the time you got the skill. Okay, and those, for a youngster, those are big, scary ideas. But you were like, I don't care. Boom, I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to commit to pain and blood, and I'm going to go get that thing. If you have any level of that passion, we're only talking about a single core capability that you will ever need to get any of that information onto the neck. So it's a really good trade-off. It's something you definitely want to do. Okay, so inside this thing that I'm calling the core capability, I'm going to describe this in a couple of ways. There are going to be two very, very small hard skills that you need, and I'm going to tell you what those are right now. You got to be able to count to 7. Boom, easy. You have to be able to recite forwards and probably backwards eventually as well the first 7 letters of the English alphabet. Boom, easy. So those are the skills, right? In this core capability, there's also a couple of constructs that you need to memorize. Now this is the bloody knee and the skinned elbow, right? Here's what they are. The first one is the natural notes. All of the 12 tones of the European 12-tone system, all the notes that exist between the nut and the 12th fret, you have to know what they are. And that doesn't mean you have to memorize every note on the fretboard. It means you have to understand the order that they come in, and that's it, right? The other thing, the skinned elbow, is the major scale, which is a construct of distances between notes that no matter where you play it, it is the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. No matter where you play that construct, it sounds the same. So you need to have that memorized. And then finally, another easy one is you just need to know the names of the open strings. So with those pieces of information, all of the natural notes, how that works, the major scale, and the notes on the open strings, you can use your 2 skills, counting to 7 and being able to recite the English alphabet up to G. And those are the things that you use for the core capability. Okay, I'm already talking too much. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to teach you these things. This core capability, I'm going to teach you how to put it all together. I'm going to show you the constructs. I'm going to show you how they get on the neck. And I'm going to teach you how to put this core capability together. Then I'm going to demonstrate a new piece of information and how you apply this core construct and get that new piece of information onto the neck. Okay, let's get started. Okay, let's get our core capability together. And again, that core capability is going to be the mix of the 2 skills we have and a couple of constructs that we have to memorize. So we already know we have the 2 skills. Count to 7, recite the first 7 letters of the alphabet. We've got that. Let me get you the information that we're going to need to analyze, to be able to analyze against, to form our core capability. The first one is the natural notes. Now these are all the notes in the 12-tone Western library. Now you can see that I've only got 7 here. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There are spaces in between some of these notes, and those spaces represent the distance between the two notes. And that distance is expressed in one of two ways. It's either whole steps or half steps. Whole step on the guitar is 2 frets, and a half step is 1 fret. So you can see that all of these are basically a whole step apart, except for B and C and E and F. It's a really good way, a shortcut to memorize this system. All of the natural notes are a whole step apart, except for B and C and E and F. It's a great shortcut. Now, we've got to figure out what those notes are in between. That's our next challenge. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of them for you. Let's start on A. I'm going to pick this A here on the 5th fret E string. Up a whole step is my B note. A, B, right? And this note in between, that one right there, that's going to have two different names. And the way this works is that it's either going to be called the note below it with a sharp symbol, so that would be A sharp. Sharp simply means we're going up in pitch. Sharp is up. We're increasing the pitch. That's sharp, A sharp. Or depending on the context, that same note could be called B with a flat symbol in it. B flat. Flat means reducing the pitch, going down in pitch. So that note could be A sharp or B flat. That terminology, a note having two different names, is called enharmonics. You don't really need to worry about that too much. I'm going to do one more for you, and then you can fill out the rest. B and C are right next to each other, so we don't have to do anything there. Our next whole step is between C and D. So we just apply that same thing. This note in the middle of C and D could be either C sharp, or it could also be called D flat. You can fill out the rest of those. But this represents the skinned knee. This is one of those things you just have to take the time and memorize. But that's it. Not very hard. Okay, I'm going to wipe that out. The next thing we have to know is the major scale, and here it is. Now you can see it looks a little bit familiar, but there's no letters, it's all numbers, and I'll tell you why that is. Unlike the natural notes, where A will always be A, and it will always be a whole step apart from B, and B and C will always be a half step apart, this is a mobile construct. You can play this anywhere, and you can move it around, and I'll give you a demonstration. Here is the major scale. Here's what it sounds like. If I play that same pattern anywhere on the neck, it always sounds the same. It's the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sound. And that sound is built like this. This is sort of the rule set, the formula for the major scale. That's why we use numbers, because we can move this anywhere we want to. And those numbers allow the construct to be mobile. It's not tied to letter names. It's mobile. It can be used anywhere. And so here's how it looks. In between the root, which is the first note in the scale, the root and the 1 are the same thing. In between the root and the 2 is always a whole step. In between the 2 and the 3 is always a whole step. This is familiar, right? The shortcut to memorize this construct is simply this. The major scale, all the notes in the major scale are a whole step apart, except for the 3rd and the 4th note, and the 7th and the root. When you get back to the root, it's only a half step from the 7 back to the starting point. So again, that construct is mobile. It's movable. That's why we use the numbers, because the numbers can stay consistent no matter where we play it. Okay, so those are the two pieces of information. The third one that you need to know is the names of the open strings. Hopefully you already know that. E, A, D, G, B, E. Got to memorize that. I'm going to take that off. Okay, so now we're going to take all that information, the name of the open strings, the natural notes, the major scale, and our two skills, and we're going to apply that. I'm going to show you how to build this core competency, this core capability. And we're going to do it with this. This is our A chord, open A. We're going to do 3 tasks on this chord, and using to exercise our core capability. And that is task number 1. We're going to find out what the notes are in this chord, because we need to know the notes of the chord. Given that we have our natural notes, we want to find out what the notes are. Then we're going to apply a major scale around the chord, and we're going to use that major scale to find out what the numbers are in this chord and how the chord relates to itself. What are the numbers? So we've got this letters and number system that we have to glue together. And once we do that, once we have that, we're confident with that, we're going to be able to take any information in ever. So it's just this little bit of skinned knees and bruised elbows that we got to get through. Okay, here's our A chord. Here's our natural notes. Let's find out what notes are in this chord. Okay, A. Well, we got one of them already. It's the open A string. The next note in the chord is this one. This is on the D string up a whole step. And as you can see, D up a whole step is E. So we've got an A and an E in this chord so far. The next note is on the G string. G string up a whole step, right? 2 frets. As you can see, G up a whole step is A again. So we've got A, E, A. This is the next note in the chord. This is on the B string and it's up a whole step. Now you can see right here, B up a whole step puts us into one of these weird notes, right? What is this called? This note is called C sharp in this instance. In this context, this is C sharp. So we've got A, E, A, C sharp, and then the last note is E again. So we've got the names of our notes. Interesting, this chord only has 3 notes in it. Even though I'm playing 5 strings, it's only got A's, C sharp, and E's in it. Fascinating. Interesting to know. Okay, now the last task is to get all this information together. Now we know the chord, we know the notes in the chord. Now let's find these numbers. Chords come from scales. It's good to assume that this A major chord comes from an A major scale. Here's that major scale superimposed over the natural notes. And as you can see, the A notes are the root. That C sharp is the 3rd, and the E notes are the 5th. So this chord is built up of root, 3, 5, which happens to be a major triad. So that's it. We're using our counting capability, our ability to know those note names, and we're stitching it together with these numbers. Note names and numbers all stitched together. We can understand it. We can look at it through both lenses. We can understand the notes here, and we can also understand their numbers, their relationship to each other. So if we ever want to build this construct somewhere else that isn't an A, we can still build it using those numbers. Okay, so now, a few weeks goes by and your friend rolls up on a new bike and it's got some crazy new handlebar on it. It's got some levers and some cables, and you're like, I don't understand what that is, but it is a bike. And this new bike is called A augmented. And you're like, what is that? Here's the chord formula for A augmented, for any augmented chord. Root, 3, sharp 5. That means we just take the 5th note, that 5 note. The note we found out in this chord is actually E, and we just raise it up, right? It's got a sharp symbol on it, so we're going to have to make it go up. So let's find those A's and E's and C sharps again. A, E, there's one, A, C sharp, E. So the 2 E's are here and here. We got to raise those up, right? Keep all the other notes the same. That's A augmented. Okay, I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. I just used the core capability to build a new chord that I didn't know before. You may not ever need an A augmented chord. I rarely use them, but here it is. The profound thing that just happened here was I didn't have to write it down. I didn't have to study a new chord shape and new dots and new blobs on the neck. I just saw this formula and I used my core capability to build this new chord. That core capability will allow you to learn a new scale. It'll allow you to learn any new chord. It'll allow you to apply any new information you get in directly on the neck. And that is it. It happens in that same exact way every single time for every single piece of information. Okay, so there it is. That's it. Just those two pieces of information, the natural notes and how that works, and the major scale. Of course, you need to know the open strings. And those two small skills, being able to count to 7 and being able to recite those first 7 notes of the alphabet, A to G. You saw how we put those all together to be able to get a new piece of information, right? Like, here's the metaphor. You know how to ride a bike. Your friend shows up and his bike has like cables and switches on it. You're like, what the heck is that? That augmented chord. That was the new handle on the bike. You're like, well, I know how to do that. I can figure that out, right? Anyway, I hope this is helpful. I've tabbed this lesson out. That's on Patreon. I've linked that in the description below. Just get through the banged up knee and the skinned elbow and you'll be free, right? You'll have the skill and that core capability to take any information you ever come across and stick it right on the fretboard. All right, I'll see you next time.